Blood burst from their backs, scarlet threads falling like dew upon the scorched earth. The sun, an unyielding witness to their misery, burned upon their bowed necks. Their hands, trembling yet resolute, continued to dig into the sun-baked dust. For 20 lashes was the price of their crime, the tribute they had to pay. But the Lord's, those idols of weak flesh and shattered will, never paid in gold or sweat, but in ineptitude and violence. From their stone towers, they watched without seeing, judged without understanding, condemned without hesitation, and death hung over them like an invisible shroud, a cold breath upon the nape of the blind. Every step they took led them deeper into the abyss of their own ignorance. But they did not yet know it, until the tension snapped. First, it was a whisper on the wind, a shiver crawling across the skin. Then, a silence, dense, oppressive, smothering even the rustle of dry leaves. And then, evil tore through the air like a scream. Rotten flesh twisted upon itself, sprouting in dark spasms of pure agony. A grotesque dance of dead tissue and twitching nerves. A blasphemy against all natural laws. Life, once again, rising over the unlife. The trees turned treacherous, their branches grasping like hungry claws. The animals, stripped of reason, succumbed to frenzy. Eyes burning red, jaws frothing with rage. And the bones, forgotten remnants of ancient tragedies, awoke in silent hatred, awaiting their next victim. Nothing in this profane wasteland stays dead for long. Everything rises. Everything devours. The lords, as they always had, fled. In their wake, they left nothing but despair, sending peasants to certain death. Men who were never more than pawns on a merciless board, to die at the gallows or to die at the hands of the night's horror. There were no other choices. So they marched, deeper into the thicket. Their hopes, already brittle, crumbled with every step, as even the grass beneath them seemed to despise them. The air was thick, heavy with a sweet, rancid stench, as if the very earth were diseased. The shadows stretched long, shaping figures that should not exist. Beyond the mold-ridden foliage, beyond the rot and the stench, they found a fissure in the earth's flesh, a gaping wound that yawned like the mouth of the demon itself, a threshold into the deepest layers of their nightmares. They hesitated, but fear of the unknown is weaker than the certainty of death. And so they descended, one by one, swallowed by a darkness ever thickening. With each step, their rags unraveled, as if the stone itself rejected them. The walls oozed a thick, black fluid, and beneath their feet, the ground cracked like brittle bones. But worse than the rock they walked upon were those who dwelled within it. Blind beasts, demented and ancient, forged in darkness over countless generations. Creatures even fear had forgotten. Every blow upon their bodies, every shattered skull, every arm torn from its socket by unseen jaws, drove a brutal truth into their bones. They were not heroes of legend. They were not soldiers with noble cause. They were nothing, and nothing they would remain. One of them, consumed by terror, sought refuge in madness, and so he betrayed his kin. A knife to the back, a strangled gasp. And when he was discovered, there was only one fate left for him. But death was merciful compared to what awaited them. They were so far from any light, so lost in the gut of the nightmare, that the pale glow of their lantern became their sun. But even that sun faded. The wind became an eclipse, a breath of the grave that smothered even their whispers. And in the absolute dark, the walls became claws, jagged and hungry, tearing through flesh as if the abyss itself had awoken. Time turned shapeless, a punishment without end. Minutes stretched into hours, into days. Hunger became pain, pain became a whisper. Some began to speak to themselves. Others curled in silence, grinding their teeth to stifle screams. Shadows danced at the edges of their minds, whispering both promises and threats. Hallucinations. Or perhaps not. Their bodies grew weak, their thoughts slower. Cold coiled beneath their skin, nesting in their bones. The air stank of earth and despair, until the world caved in. The rock crumbled, revealing a sepulchral corridor, bathed in an eerie glow, a darkness made pale. They stepped forward, trembling, and before them, the horror rose. It was a wound in reality, a tear in the fabric of the world, where light withered and hope was devoured whole. It pulsed with an ancient, festering hatred, a malice so profound that the very air trembled in its wake. From the unholy guts of the earth, it had dwelled, lurking in the marrow of stone, in the silence of the forgotten. It was not born, nor summoned. It had always been. A parasite burrowed into the veins of existence itself. And now, like a disease, it spread, seeping through the cracks of the world, corrupting, infecting. A creeping blight that slithered toward the surface. Not merely an undead curse, but the whisper of ancient rituals. The echo of hands that had carved symbols into flesh. The consequence of sins too vile to be spoken. It had been woken by the never-ending malice of the human heart, stirred by greed, by blood, by the endless cycle of cruelty. It had no will, no mercy, no purpose. Only hunger. And the world, though it did not yet know it, was already rotting from within. Before they could raise their weapons, the creature raised its own, and the spell was cast. Their bodies betrayed their will, and in savage frenzy, they turned against one another. Fists struck with inhuman fury. Faces shattered, bones snapped. flesh breaking under the weight of merciless hands. The spectre watched with patient malice, and with a final gesture, made their skin writhe in agony. Pain roared in silence. Terror whispered eternally in their minds. No one would remember them. Their struggle had been for nothing. And in their final breath, as their blood erupted in flames, and the cavern was once again swallowed in darkness, they understood. But it was too late.